Shalom, family. Shalom, shalom, shalom. All right, we here. We have a brother that was coming on tonight, Maury Yeshaya, from Cincinnati, the House of Israel in Cincinnati, Ohio. Just so happens that right before it's time to open up the class for tonight, Maury Yeshaya had an accident and he hurt his eye. He did text me and inform me of what took place. So he's out of commission. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to proceed without Moray, except if Moray shows up. And if Moray shows up and when Moray shows up, then we can pick up where Moray would like for us to pick up at and try to get it completed on a different end. All right. Try to have those issues. The second part of the class, a different part of the class based on Moray's presentation today, based on what he was going to present to us today. Now, the topic on the floor today is, when does a day begin? Morning or evening? But when does a day begin? The purpose of us having these classes is because there are so many different Israelite communities, organizations, basically so many different teachings of Israel out here in the world today. So many different communities, doctrines, and all those things out here today that's teaching us so many different things pertaining to the Most High. But what these things do is they cause separation to take place in the midst of us. It causes us to go different ways and shun people who don't believe as we believe, don't accept what we accept. It causes problems in that area. And so what we have to attempt to do tonight is to bring about a structured way of finding a place where we can all meet, where we can all come on common grounds. And I think that way, the Creator moved my spirit to formulate this meeting for tonight, or these meetings on every Wednesday night. So we'll try to do it at least every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock at night. But we had to find a way to get Israel in a place where they can hear each other out without always bashing and pushing each other to the side and knocking them away, saying what they don't like, what they don't want, and what's not necessary and needed, and what I don't believe in, and I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want to come to your class, and I don't want to do all these things with you because I disagree with what you believe. So let me make this clear to y'all, everybody, so you all understand. We don't necessarily hold the views of those people who will be speaking on this platform. We don't necessarily share those views. There will be a lot of people speaking that we totally disagree with, completely disagree with. Excuse me. But this platform will be allowed for everybody to come in and speak their point and take a few questions and then give a few responses. That's what the purpose of this platform will be tonight. Just so happened that Maury Yeshaya from Cincinnati, prior to hurting himself, was going to speak on an issue of day and night. When a day begins and how a day, and when the evening begins, when the day begins, when the evening begins. I remember some time ago, I had a sit down with the brother, the Moray, and we were going to have an open debate at that time on that particular subject. So he sent me a list of questions, which I think I may have that list of questions. I think I may have that list of questions. If I look hard enough in my notes, I'm sure I can find them. But what I do have is a presentation that I have prepared to discuss some of the things about when the day begins and the whole purpose as to why we at Temple Kifarim, the whole purpose as to why we believe a day begins in the evening. If my brother comes on, which I pray that he does, I pray that his eye gets better, and I pray that he's able to come on. But if he comes on, then I'll relinquish the mic and I'll definitely allow him the floor. Allow him the floor so that he can begin to do his presentation. But until then, I have to do mine. Well, I'll do a presentation. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree or accept anything that, go that way, please. You have to agree or accept anything that we're saying or anything that we're doing. This platform is only for presentation, and then later on for you to bring up questionings after the presenter has finished his presentation, for you to all bring up questioning as to why the presenter feels the way he feels about what he feels. And if it's some errors or some flaws or some just general things that you might want to know. Because a lot of people, when we first come into Israel, usually the way we are taught is usually the doctrine that we hold on to. It's usually the teachings that we hold on to. But those things are not necessarily always correct. Those things are not always necessarily the closest way to get closer to the Almighty. Those things are not always necessarily truth. So what we're attempting to do is give everybody an opportunity to speak their truth. And then the people in the audience, whether you're listening live or you're listening to the pre-recorded version of it, you can always text your questions in the room and we'll always get the questions. And then you can do your questioning and answering portion, and we'll have an opportunity to address whatever questions you may have. All right? So here we go. So this is one of the documents that I had prepared some years ago. The document may even have a date on it. I don't even know. It's been so long since I've done it, since I prepared it. But it was basically in reference to when a day begins. And as you can see, it starts off with the word, or when a month begins also. Because a day in a month, in order for you to determine the beginning of a month, you have to be able to determine when the beginning of a day is. So this document starts off by speaking about when the beginning of a month is. And the word for Hebrew for month is kisei. But this word here is kadosh. And kadosh meaning new. Kadosh meaning new. And it was also symbolic for month. Kisei is moon. Kadosh is month. There's another Hebrew word for month, which is Yareah. Yareah is another word, another Hebrew word for the month. All right, so let's deal with Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with the word Kadosh meaning holy. Yes, that's a different portion than this one. This one is dealing with the new moon, not necessarily the physical object itself, but the condition of the moon, the status of the moon, which means that there are different phases that the moon goes through. You have one, which is the crescent new moon. Then you have the humpback new moon or humpback moon. Then you have the waning moon. And then you have the full moon. Those are different, like 4 different stages that the moon goes into. and then you come right back around to the new moon again, the crescent new moon. Some people teach that the full moon is a new moon. Well, we don't hold that in our understanding here. We believe the crescent moon is the new moon. The first visible slither, the first visible crescent is the new moon for us. And as we explain the reasonings, we'll explain to you all why we say what it is that we say. Let me see if I can get rid of this. It's not going anywhere, right? So let me see if I can get rid of it. It's a way that I can get rid of that. I just got to think about it for a second. All right, let me leave it alone. It's there. I'm going to leave it there. Kodesh, meaning new moon, by implication, a month or new month. Kodesh, the new month of the day, the new moon, the day of the new moon, the calendar of a lunar month, which was a festival of the ancient Hebrews. And you'll find some of those scripture references in Numbers 29:6, 1 Samuel 20:5, 1 Samuel 18:24, Exodus 19:1. And Bikodesh is in the new moon or in the new month. Okay, we're going to move on. What I want to do is I want to pull up my scriptures to see if I can actually pull. I may have to open up my Bible on this platform, on this page. So let me get my Bible so I can have it on this page where we are. Okay. Let me do my streaming and let me change my screen. I want to change into another screen so that you can see the Hebrew scriptures. All right, very good. All right, so now we're going to use this for a moment. We're going to go to the book of Genesis, the first chapter in the book of Genesis. All right, in the first chapter of the book of Genesis, it speaks about the heavens and the earth being formed, being brought into existence. And what we see here, it says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. So this word here for darkness is koshek. And darkness was over the face of the deep. Koshek was over the face of the deep. And I think that's also addressed in my presentation later. And the reference for that is if you have the Strong's Concordance, the reference for the word koshek is 28:22. But darkness was over the face of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim was hovering over the face of the waters. And Elohim said, "Let there be light." So in essence, there was no light at this particular time. It was only darkness. There was no light. So therefore, the light did not exist as we would be able to see it and have an understanding of it. There was no light. There was only darkness. So when the Most High said, when Elohim said, "Let there be light," he had to actually call to the light and bring the light from somewhere into this form of existence. So what he did was he called to the darkness, and he brought the light from the darkness. A lot of people don't understand that, but if you read it in the Hebrew tongue, he called to the light, and the light came forward. But remember, there was nothing there but darkness in the initial formation of the heavens and the earth. And Elohim saw that the light was good, And Elohim separated the light from the darkness. You see what I mean? He called to the darkness to bring forth the light out of the darkness. So therefore, if this is true, which we have to accept that it is true because the scripture says it is. If Elohim called to the light and brought the light out of the darkness into existence, then that means by default, the darkness was first. Therefore, if the darkness is first, then we have to begin at the evening. Once the evening is completed, a new day has begun. And that's going to be my same position all the way through to the end of my presentation, my dissertation. All the way through, it's going to be that same way. But I want to deal with the book of Genesis first because there's a lot of information in the first chapter of the book of Genesis speaking on the issue of the night, of light and darkness, day and night, when a day begins, morning and evening. It says Elohim called the light day. Now, this is where a lot of people, in my opinion, this is where a lot of people get caught up on when they say a day begins in the morning or with the sunrise. This is what a lot of people say. But that's not what it is. The light was called day. That's just a portion of time. It's not the completed 24 hours of a cycle of time. It's only a portion of a time. So just for the sake of argument, we're going to say half of that day is 12 hours. So that first portion of that particular day is 12 hours. We're going to call that portion day because it's daylight. We're going to call that portion day. But you still have another 12 hours of darkness included in that one day. Like if I asked you a question, simple question, when were you born? And your answer was, what day was I born? Yes. What day were you born on? And you say to me, I was born January the 25th, 2023. So if you said that to me, you was born January 25th in the day, and I asked you what time, and you go on and you elaborated, well, I was born at 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's still dark 3 o'clock in the morning. But yet your birthday was on that particular day. How is that possible if you believe that a day doesn't start until the sun rises? So therefore, you would have been born the day before and not on that day at all. So when they say Elohim called the light day, he only called that portion of a day daylight. Because a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Or Elohim called the light day. And the darkness of that day, he called night. Now, night in Hebrew, the word for night is Layla. Darkness, again, is Koshek. He called the Koshet Layla. And that's what we have to understand. So the daytime or daylight hours, he called Yom. And then the nighttime or the nighttime hours, he called Layla, darkness or evening or night. Like when you hear some Hebrews in Hebrew, they tell you good night, they'll say Layla Tob. Tob is good and Layla is night. That's the way we address each other when we're closing out, and we're closing out in the Hebrew tongue. It says, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Now watch this portion because this is another indicator of when a day begins. It says, and there was evening. So evening came first. And when that evening was completed, there was morning. And at the end of the morning, it was a completion of the first day. And that's exactly what's taking place here. So then we're starting again. And Elohim said, let there be an expansion in the midst of the waters, and let us separate the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the expansions and separated the waters under the waters from the waters that was above the expansion, and it was so. And Elohim called the expansion heaven. The word in Hebrew for heavens is Shemaim. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. Day 2. Yom Sheni. Okay, very good. So here we're addressing the issue of when a day begins. So let's go down to verse 14. And every time you see where a transition of day takes place, like right here in verse 13, it says, and there was evening first, and then there was morning the third day. And you know, to get from evening to morning is a transition of time. So you had to go through that transition of time to get to the morning period, and then the completion of that morning period completed day 3. All right. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the expansions of the heavens to separate day from night. See, there's a day, a complete day is a 24-hour cycle. 24-hour cycle in a day. As close to 24 hours as possible. Some places a little longer, a little shorter. You know, in different places it's a little shorter, some places a little bit longer. But to accurately say it, 24 hours is a summarization of how many hours is in a day. So now if we're in an equal, just for sake of reasoning, we got 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of light, which we don't have. All depending on what time of the year you're in, and it depends on what those seasons are doing. But usually you'll never get 12 and 12. But just for the sake of argument, we're going to pretend as if it is. It said, verse 1, Genesis 1 and 14, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to separate the day, which is Yom, from the night, which is Layla. So he put some lights in the heavens to separate the day from the night. Now, in reality, there was already light shining on the earth, but that light wasn't coming from the sun because the sun wasn't here yet. That light was the light that the Creator brought that darkness, that triple stage of darkness. He called to that and commanded that it release a portion of itself, and it brought forth light. If you sit here and you close your eyes and you get in the dark as possible with all darkness around you, you'll still see light. Well, the Creator concentrated all that, magnified all that, and brought that forward and made a dome over the earth at a certain time of the day, and it's called Yom. That's the light that we're speaking of. But now in this portion, Genesis 1 and 14, the Creator is saying that he's going to bring forth some lights in the heavens to govern over and bring a separating point between the day and the night. So he goes on to say, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. So these lights that the Father is bringing in the earth, he's saying he's going to let them be for signs, for seasons, for days and for years. And let them be lights in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made 2 great lights. The greater light to rule the day. The greater light was to, now in this portion here, you got to pay close attention because you'll miss what's about to be said. The greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And Elohim set them in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. Now, the sun was only governed and placed there to rule over the day, not to give light upon the earth. That's not his only job. It was the light that we see in the earth is not necessarily coming from the sun, but there's light on the earth without the sun even being out. And anybody who doesn't understand that is something else we got to talk about. But sometimes the sun is not even shining, but yet there's light on the earth. So we think that all the light that shines upon the earth comes from the sun, but that's not true. There's a light in the heavens that exists, and it has nothing to do with the sun. There's a scientific thing that's out right now. You know, when we look up into the sky at night and it's dark in the heavens outside in the sky, we were taught that in outer space is dark. But how about in outer space? It might be light shining in that darkness. It could be light. There's a scientific thing out today. Prince is not saying that is absolutely true, but there's a scientific thing out today where the scientists are now saying that it's not darkness in outer space, but there's light. There's a lot of suns out there. There's a lot of things illuminating in the heavens above. So don't always think that what we have been taught or what you think is the absolute of everything, because it doesn't go that way. There are different dimensions out there that we haven't even begun to embark upon, that we know nothing about. And we don't know how those solar systems are established, set up, organized, and ran. All we know is the one that we see, and that's the only one that we're dealing with. But let me move on. So the sun was set up to govern over the yom. It wasn't that the sun was yom. It says, and let them be lights in the expansions of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And then he made the stars also. Let me read this part, because this part may have caused you all to think twice about what I just stated. The greater light to rule the day. No, let me back it up. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. Now, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. Is that talking about the sun? Quite naturally, we would think that it is. We would think that it is. What if I told you that it's not? What if I told you that light that's in the heavens, the greater light that's in the heavens, is a light that was established by the Creator prior to the sun being formed? Think about it. And then the sun was put in place, and the light from the sun shines upon the earth, but yet that is not all of the light that's hidden on the earth itself. See, the earth, the sunlight brings forth nutrients for every living being on the earth to absorb and to grow and to develop. Every living substance on the earth lives off of the nutrients carried by the rays of the sun. The Creator didn't mention none of those things with the sun, with this light that he's talking about right now. With this light he's talking about, he said that it would be a light to give light upon the earth, and it was so. Then he created the sun. And then let's watch. Then it says, and Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and he made the stars. And Elohim set them in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. Now, there are more than just the sun and the moon and the stars that's being placed in the heavens to give light to us. But the sun, this big light, and then the moon, this lesser light, is to shine its light upon us from a reflection. The sun itself is a big, let's say, just hypothetically, let's just put it in the terms that we all can understand. It's a big coal, big chunk of coal. And it's a self-sufficient chunk of coal which feeds itself. It keeps itself alive. It keeps itself burning and illuminated. It's a self-sufficient piece of black coal that burns. And the essence of it is what gives life and light in its degree to its purpose upon the earth. But without that, we will still have light upon the earth, but we would have no life coming through to feed all living organisms if we didn't have the sun. So those are two different things. Go back to Genesis, the first chapter, and you'll see where the Creator created the light. He said, let there be light. And there was light, but there was no sun. But there was light, but no sun. Therefore, what I'm explaining to you shouldn't seem so different. He said, let there be lights in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth. He wasn't speaking yet about the sun. And then it says, and Elohim made two great lights. Now he's speaking about the sun, the Shemesh, and he's speaking about the moon, YISRAEL. The greater lights to rule the day, because every time daytime comes out, the sun comes out with it. And when the sun goes down, daytime is on its way out. Watch this for a second. If you watch the sunrise early in the morning, before the sun breaks through the horizon, there's daylight out. And then the sun begins to creep up a little behind the daylight. The sun hasn't even cracked the horizon, but yet you see light. Now, before the sun goes down in the evening, after it goes down, you still see what they call yom, daylight. Now that yom, as it disseminates, become a mixture. And that's what they call Arab. Arab means mixture. You ever heard the word Arabian? Well, Arabian means a mixture, because that stock over there is not 100% of who they were, like an African. They're a mixture, a mixed breed, a mixture, and that's why they call Arabians or Arabians. So that's what Arab means. Arab means mixture. So as the sun goes down, that mixture takes place, and we call that evening. But do you also know that when the sun goes down, that Arab, that mixture takes place, then you get what we call the beginning of a day, and let's say hypothetically is day one. When that day goes through its cycle, whether it's 8 hours, 12 hours, 9 hours, and is getting back to where the sun is about to come up again, if you ever notice, pay attention, there's another evening sky or another Arab right there in the morning before that sun rises. There's another mixture time. There's another mixture period right before the sun rises. So you have two evenings or two Arabs in one day. Every day is consisted of two Arabs, and most people, we live it, we experience it, but we never take heed and notice it. But there are two Arabs in one day. If you go to sleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, not knowing that you slept that long, you would think that that mixture would be bringing in the evening, but it wouldn't. It'd be bringing in the daytime, and you would be confused because you're not accustomed to that. So this is a fact. If you don't understand it, you can question me later, and maybe I can explain it to you. Let's start at verse 17. Well, I want to start at 16 again. Genesis 1 and 16. And Elohim made the two lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And Elohim set them in the expansion of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night. So that's the sun and that's the moon. But in here, it only calls them lights, or. It only calls them or. To rule over the day and over the night, and to separate light from darkness. So let's examine this for a minute. To rule over doesn't mean that it's bringing about, because the moon itself brings light upon the earth, as the Creator said it would. It brings light upon the earth in its full condition. When it's a full moon, it's the lightest it is out here on the earth. But how about when it's a half a moon? How about when it's a gibbous moon? How about when it's a waning moon? It's still a moon, but it doesn't show us the same cycles as the sun does. We never see the sun in half, crescent, humpback, gibbous moon. We never see the sun in that position. But we always see the moon in one of those positions. So that lets us know that the Father is talking about a different thing earlier when he's talking about those lights that's going to give light upon the earth. But yet you can still see in a lot of those instances when those things are not present. Sometimes you can still see outside and the moon is not out there at all. And I'm talking about in a dark day. There's still a likeness about it. If you never lived in the country, you probably would not know what it is that I'm speaking of. But there is still some likeness in the air, in the sky, that you might not be so easy to see, but other creatures can. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning, fourth day. So we're going to move past this portion. I think we understood that now. Let's get back to the lesson. In this lesson, we talked about things that took place. Let me pull the lesson back up for you. In this lesson, we spoke about things that has taken place. And we talked about what's taking place in the book of Judges. And Judges says, and on the fifth day he arose early in the morning to depart. And the girl's father said, let's go there. Let's visit that. Judges, the 19th chapter. Let's go there. All right, can we all go there, please? Judges, the 19th chapter. Let me know when you get it, please, because I don't want to present anything that you're not ready for. All right, Judges, the 19th chapter. All right. Judges, the 19th chapter. And we're going to go down to verse, I think it's verse 13. But a lot of people are not aware of the story. So let's read the story. I'll read the story just to get you up to date to where we are. Judges 19:1. In those days when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Yehudah. And his concubine was unfaithful to him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Yehudah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her, to speak kindly to her and to bring her back, and had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys. And she brought him into her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay. And he remained with him 3 days. Now watch that part right there. He remained with him 3 days. Now that 3 days is Yom. Okay, so don't think that Yom is only talking about he stayed with him at the nighttime and then he stayed with him in the daytime and then at night he left. Or he could have went and did what he had to do and then came back before the sun rose. No, a day is consecutive of a 24-hour period, a 24-hour cycle. So he didn't just stay with him at night. He stayed with him in the day and at night until the next morning. And then during the daylight time is when he would try to leave. But it wouldn't always go that way because the father-in-law, he enjoyed the company that the man brought, the priest. You know, people don't like when a priest is in the scene. People don't like when a priest leaves. Sometimes a priest has to go, but people try to get a priest to stay because they believe that the blessings from the Creator comes by way of priesthood. So let's start at verse 3. Then the husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her. Okay, we already did that part. Let's go down. 3 days. So they ate and drank and spent the night there. So he already stayed with him 1 day. Would you agree? Yes, he stayed with him 1 day. That's over. He spent the night. And on the 4th day, so he completed his whole 3 days. And now, according to this, they're starting up on the 4th day now. And on the 4th day, they arose early in the morning. On the what? On the 4th day, they arose. On the 4th yom. Well, a day is broken up into different parts pertaining to 1 day. You got the morning, you got the afternoon, and you got the evening, you got the night. Those are all parts of 1 yom, of 1 day. And if you leave out any part of that, you cannot exclude the rest of those things when you're trying to accumulate a day. Let me give you what I'm saying. And on the 4th day, they arose early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But the girl's father said to the son-in-law, strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and after that you may go. So the father-in-law said, hey, look, all right, it's morning time. It is the 4th day. Sit down. Let's sit down and let's break some bread, get something to eat. And any righteous man will give him what he's requesting. It's not hard to sit down and break some bread. Well, he probably was a good dude. Before you go, then you may go after we eat. So the 2 of them sat and ate and drank together. And the girl's father-in-law said to the man, be pleased to spend the night and let your heart be merry. So here it is. They stayed there all day. And in this daytime, now it's becoming to be close to the evening. So the man saying, hey, look, stay for a while. Spend the night. Let your heart be happy. Got him drunk, gave him some food. He said, hang around a little bit longer. And when the man rose up to go, it was getting late. So the man got up to get ready to go. And then his father-in-law pressed him and said, until he spent the night there again. So now we're looking on 5 days. And on the 5th day, he arose early in the morning. Now I got to stop you now. Before we get to 8, 7, on 7, we're in the 4th day. Okay? This man was chilling with his father-in-law on the 4th day. You don't believe me? Let's start. Let's go back. And on the 4th day, they arose early in the morning, and he prepared himself to go. His father-in-law, he said, strengthen yourself, eat some bread and wine. So the 2 of them sat and ate together. And the girl said to the man, the girl's father said to the man, be pleased to spend the night and let your heart be merry. So he stayed the night. That night began the next day. It began the 5th day. And watch what it says. The wording is very careful here. And on the 5th day, he arose early in the morning. That's letting us know that that morning is a part of that day. That day that he stayed at night, that started at night when he stayed there at night. That day, that yom was a part of that 5th day. When he rose up early in the morning, how come it doesn't say he rose up on the 5th day to leave? It says, and on the 5th day, he rose early in the morning because he was already there when the 5th day started. He rose early in the morning to depart. And watch this. And the girl's father said, strengthen your heart and wait until the day declines. Now wait until the day goes down. He didn't argue with him. So they ate, both of them. And when the man and his concubine and his servants rose up to depart right before the day went out, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, now pay attention to this because this is the clincher. This is what so many people miss. So many people ignore. A lot of people believe a day starts when the sun rises, but not according to this. And this is an actual record from the Bible in how our forefathers started a day. I'm going to start it again. And when the man and his concubine and his servants rose up to depart, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, behold now, the day is waned, is running toward evening, is going down toward evening. Now pay attention. That means the day is going out now. The time is going out. It's waxing down. It's waning down. It's going toward the evening. Please spend the night. Behold, the day draws to its close. That's the end. You see that right there? That day is coming to an end. The end of that day is coming. It's fastly approaching. The day is waning toward evening. Therefore, if it's like right now, the sun is going down where I am, it's waning toward the evening. When that evening comes, that mixture is over, it's now the next day. He says, behold, the day draws to a close. Lodge here and let your heart be merry. And tomorrow you shall arise early in the morning for your journey and go home. But the man would not spend the night. He rose up and departed and arrived opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys and his concubines with him. When they were near Jebus, the day was nearly over. That day was almost over. So it's getting dark now. Nighttime is coming up on them. And the servant said to his master, come now, let us turn aside to this city of Jebus, of the Jebusites, and spend the night, spend the Layla. And his master said unto him, we will not turn aside into the city of foreigners, who do not belong to the people of YISRAEL, but we will pass to Gibeah. And he said to his young man, come and let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or at Ramah. Now, both of these places, Gibeah and Ramah, was where Israelites lived, preferably the tribe of Benjamin. But that's where they lived. Now, this Levite said, we're not going to stay in the land of the Jebusites. The Jebusites was pagans. They worship false deities. He said, I ain't going to stay there. We're not going to stay there. He's stern. He's stubborn in a righteous way. He said, we're going to go here. So that's what he began to do. He went all the way into the land of Gibeah, okay, and that's where they stayed. So they passed on and went their way. Now they're walking in the night. And the sun went down on them near Gibeah. So the sun went down. Now we're heading into the next day, which belonged to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and to spend the night in Gibeah. And he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into the house to spend the night. And he was a Levite, and that shouldn't have happened. Nobody took him into the house to spend the night. And behold, an old man was coming from his work in the fields at even. What time of the day? In the evening. The man from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was a sojourner in Gibeah. He was a foreigner. And the man of the place was Benjamites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, where are you going? And where do you come from? And he said to him, we are passing from Bethlehem in Yehudah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Yehudah, and I am going to the house of the Most High. But no one has taken me into his house. The purpose of somebody taking him into his house was so that he could spend the night so he wouldn't have to sleep on the streets. We have straw and feed for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and for our female servant, and the young man with your servants. There is no lack of anything. The old man said, peace be unto you. Lake le shalom. Peace be unto you. And I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square. So he brought him into his house, gave him and his donkey some feed, and they washed their feet and they drank. Now, I wanted to see what doesn't really even matter, but I wanted to read. If you get a chance, you can read the story. It's very interesting what takes place after this. But the part that I needed to jump on was the part that I needed to show you, where it says that the day was coming to an end right before the evening. And then it shows you that if the day is coming to an end, the next part of that day has to be at night, and that must be the beginning of the next day. There is no other way to put it. There's another place. Nehemiah. What is that? Nehemiah, is it 13? I think it's Nehemiah 13, where it speaks about the Shabbat. All right. There's another place here in Nehemiah where it speaks about the Shabbat. And let me find it, 13 and 18. All right. Now, Nehemiah was generally the new captain of our people at this particular time. He was a new one in charge. And what Nehemiah did was Nehemiah had to go back and reestablish the temple, the building of the temple. Him, Ezra, and a lot of other Levites all got together, and they orchestrated and set it up and broke the foundation for the temple to be reestablished. And the laws of the Israelites the laws of the Most High could be established upon Israel once again. So I want to start reading in Nehemiah 13 and 15. Nehemiah 13 and 15. In those days, I saw Judah people treading wine presses on the Sabbath. Now, there's a lot of people who don't keep the Shabbat. There's a lot of our people today who have a rotating Shabbat. My only request is that whatever day you have as a Shabbat, that you don't do any work on that day. If you're going to keep that day as a Shabbat, let it be a Shabbat to you, to the best of your ability. Don't do any work on the Shabbat day. But Nehemiah saw our people treading wine presses on the Shabbat day. So they were ignoring the Sabbath as if it wasn't there, as if it wasn't a Shabbat. And they was doing whatever it was that they wanted to do. And they were working and bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Shabbat Yom. So that would even be on the Shabbat Yom. If you wanted to say that the Yom was just the daylight hours, that's cool. They're doing that on the Shabbat. How many hours is in a day? Can anybody tell me? Statistically, how many hours is in a day? There are statistically 24 hours in a day. Some of that day is darkness. Some of that day is light. And then two portions of that day is an erev, which is a mixture. There's a mixture at night, and there's a mixture in the morning. That's the complete cycle of a day. So that Shabbat day is complete. You don't shut that Shabbat in half because you say that it's only when the sun rises, and then when the sun go down, the Shabbat is over. That's not the way it go. Even if you started, just hypothetically, I'm not saying that this is correct. Even if you started the Shabbat when the sun rose, what do you do with that dark time? What do you do with that nighttime? When the sun go down, is that still a day? Is that still a part of your day? Because according to scripture, once that sun goes down and that evening is gone, that's a part of another day. But let's just deal with this for a second. So they was treading presses, wine presses, and loading them on donkeys, and also wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Shabbat day. And I warned them on the day when they sold food. He said, Tyrians also who lived in the city, brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Shabbat day to the people of Judah in Jerusalem itself. He says, then I confronted the nobles of Judah and said to them, what is this evil thing that you are doing, profaning the Shabbat day? Did your fathers act in this way? And did not our Elohim bring all this disaster on us and on this city? Now you are bringing more wrath on YISRAEL by profaning the Shabbat day. Now, Nehemiah was the governor, so he had some rank and pull. Watch how he settles this dispute of people violating the Shabbat day by working on the Shabbat day, bringing goods in and selling goods on the Shabbat day. He says, as soon as it began to grow dark, wait a minute. Now we got two scriptures that says the exact same thing. As it begins to grow dark, as the day began to come to an end, he's even more specific. He says, as it begins to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Shabbat came in. He's saying that the Shabbat came in after it got dark. So right as it began to grow dark before the Shabbat. So he's letting you know that that was even before that mixture. He says, I commanded the doors should be shut and gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Shabbat day. Until after the Shabbat day, they shall not be opened. King. My apologies, family. I have to apologize. I have a guy who does some work for me at one of the properties down here, and he's finished work and he needs to be paid. So please forgive me for having to do that. But I didn't want to disrespect him and not answer his call while he was calling. But as soon as it was getting close to the Shabbat day and the sun was going down, he closed the gates and locked up the city. And he said, ain't nobody going out until after the Shabbat is over. He said, I commanded that the doors should be shut and gave orders that they shall not be opened until after Acharei, until after the Shabbat. And I stationed some of my servants at the gate that no load might be brought in on the Shabbat day. So think about it. If he stationed people that no loads will be brought on the Shabbat day, why did he close it down as the sun went down on that day, leading into what we call the Shabbat, if the Shabbat didn't start at sunset? That's something for you to think about. If the Shabbat didn't start till the next morning, then that means that they would have all that night that they could have sold goods to the people in the city. They could have sold all that night because they wouldn't have been violating the Shabbat if the Shabbat didn't start when the sun went down. This is a very good lesson for people to take heed to. The merchants and the sellers of all kinds wore lodges outside Jerusalem once or twice. But I warned them and said to them, why do you lodge outside the wall? If you do it again, I will lay hands on you. That's my kind of man. I will lay hands on you. From that time on, they did not come on the Shabbat. Then I commanded the Levites that they should purify themselves and come and guard the gates to keep the Shabbat day holy. So many of our people are violating the Shabbat day by not starting the Shabbat when the sun goes down on Friday night. So many of our people, if Nehemiah was alive today, he will be going from city to city to city with a sword, chopping off heads. That's what he will be doing. Just for the many atrocious violations of violating the Shabbat day. There are so many communities that believe that the Shabbat don't start when the sun rises in the sky. And that means that from Friday night on to sunrise, if they're out doing whatever they're doing, then they're in violation. We have to unify this, the family. We have to unify, bring this together, and get our families on a stronghold so we can get out of this condition that we're in today. We have to do what we have to do to organize and structure this so that we can get in proper alignment with the Creator. Now, I have a couple more places where I would like to go, but I only want to keep this short. 1 hour is long enough. So I've covered quite a few things in this 1 hour. I do have a whole ton of scriptures more that I can present to show about when a day begins, when a Shabbat begins, and those things of that nature. I have a whole lot of other places to go where I could go. You know what? I'll go one more place. All right, Prince, you convinced me, Prince. You convinced me. I'll go one more place, and this is going to be the last place I go, and I'm going to make it quick. One more place. And this is going to be the last place we go, and then we're going to get out of here because we got work to do. All right, let's go to the book of Leviticus. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. A lot of people have controversy over this, and a lot of people claim that they have a day, a way for them to do what they want to do, that this is only talking about this one particular day. But that's not how everything else lined up according to what we just read. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, verse 25. That's where we're going to start. And we'll make this as quick as possible. And the Most High said to Moshe, saying, now, on the 10th day of this 7th month is a day of atonement. It shall be for you the time of a holy convocation, and you shall afflict yourselves and present a food offering to the Most High. And you shall not do any work on that day. Now, what day was this? The 10th day. That's it right here. It says the 10th day of the 7th month is the day of atonement. You shall afflict yourselves and present yourselves present a food offering before the Most High. And you shall not do any work in that very day. So on that 10th day, you couldn't do any work either. For it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before the Most High your Elohim. For whosoever soul it be does not be afflicted, on that very day shall be cut off from his people. So that's showing you how important the Day of Atonement was. That if you did not afflict your soul on this Day of Atonement, you could be cut off from the house of Israel. Verse 30. And whosoever does any work on that very day, that person will I destroy from among this people. He just reiterated how important this Day of Atonement was. He says, you shall not do no work. Don't do any work. Now, which day of the week was this? It's on the 10th day of the month. The 10th day of the, what was that? The 7th month? The 10th day of the 7th month was the Day of Atonement. The 10th day, the 10th Yom, the 10th Yom. But when does a Yom begin? Well, let's see. It is a statute forever throughout all your generations in all of your dwelling places. So a lot of people that tell you things like you can't keep the Shabbat, you can't keep the laws of the Most High in the land of captivity, then this is where they're proving the wrong. It says, this is a statute throughout all your generations in all of your dwellings. Wherever you dwell upon the earth, you have to keep the Day of Atonement. It shall be to you a Sabbath, a solemn rest. What day of the month is this supposed to be on? On the 10th day of the month. But when was the day supposed to begin? When did the 10th day begin? Let's see if it lines up with the other scriptures that we presented. It shall to be to you a Sabbath, a solemn rest. You shall afflict your souls on the 9th day of the month, beginning at even. There we go again. That's the third consistent statement that said that a day begins after the evening. So on the 9th day of the month at even is when you shall begin your affliction. And then it says, from evening till evening shall you keep what? Your Sabbaths. Wait a minute. I thought you keep a Sabbath from morning till sunset, like when the sunrise to the evening. No. This says, from evening to evening shall you keep your Sabbath. May the Most High be praised. We're not going to get into this anymore. No more questions or comments. If there's anyone in the listening audience who is live with us right now, if you have any questions, I'll give you a few minutes to ask your question, and I'll try to present you with your answer. If you're listening to this after it's already been recorded, if you have any questions, type it into the chat room, and we'll get the link to let us know that there's a question, and we will address your question. May the Most High be praised. So I'm going to give it a few minutes. If nothing happens in a few minutes, well, there you go. Nothing happens. May the Most High be praised. We're going to close this out. And again, this is only for informational purposes only, to try to help our people to see the light a little bit clearer in how and what it is that the Most High wants us to do in reference to when the day begins, when the evening is, and when the holy days are to begin. We begin to count. May the Most High be praised. Likely shalom, shalom lechem.